We are gearing up to the postponed Essex Junction annual meeting where we're going to be voting on trustees and the village budget. And we're doing this, you're our first election forum for the election 2020 season in this new remote platform. And as you can see, I'm here in our empty studios. You all are in your home offices joining us. And we're going to get an overview from you of the ballot that people can expect to see either when they go in to vote on June 2nd or that they'll get in the mail and can mail in. So perhaps somebody can just give us a little overview of what people can expect on their ballot and how they should expect to see that. Are they getting that in the mail? Do they need to go to the village offices to get that?
Sure,
Andrew, would you like to take that?
I'd be happy to take that. Thank you, Megan. And thank you for having us and having us be the first ups or the guinea pigs for this live election 2020 coverage. We appreciate that partnership with Town Meeting TV. Thank you. So in terms of really how we got here, really COVID or coronavirus reared its ugly head back in March, with the governor having an executive order really limiting the ability to gather together. And the stay safe, stay home order that came from the governor, we no longer were able to have our regular village annual meeting and our regular voting process. So we had to cancel that as it was not in the best interest of our residents, and it would have been illegal to have that many people come together at one point in time. And so with that, we had to cancel the annual meeting. We had to cancel the traditional voting process, and people will instead all active registered voters in the village of Essex Junction will be receiving a ballot for their budget and for all items that we would have normally covered during the annual meeting. When I say active registered voters, what I want to be clear on is that if you are registered and you have not been challenged, then you will receive a ballot in the mail. What that means by being challenged is if you may have moved out of Essex, if you are presumed to have deceased, then you would have been challenged by our town clerk. And to check on that process as to whether you're challenged or not, you can call the town office and ask for the town clerk. They'll be able to let you know. If you have not received your ballot on June 2nd, that is our voting day, you can go to the Essex High School between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. and you will be able to vote in person. And then that way you would be able to still vote in person. Otherwise, it will be in the mail. You don't have to leave your home. You can stay in your pajamas just like we all do when we work. I mean, when we're relaxing at home. And if you would like, I can go ahead and put a sample ballot up on the screen.
That'd be great. Thanks. And I want to remind folks that may be watching live on the YouTube channel or live on Channel 17, because we are both on live on Channel 17 and on the Town Meeting Television YouTube channel, that you can call in and ask questions. If you do call in, you can ask questions, or you can join us via Zoom and put your questions in the chat. And that phone number is 1-929-205-6099. You should see it on your screen somewhere down here. And the code is 828-8732-9960. And then we'll put you through to ask your questions, make your comments, and then let Andrew and Evan take that up. And we're going to be on until 4:30. So go ahead and share your screen.
And Megan, as Andrew is putting that up, a little bit of, so a couple ways to communicate with the town. Our main phone number that will be answered by the clerk's office is 802-878-1341. That's 802-878-1341. And the town's new website address is essexvt.org.
You got a new website.
So essexvt.org. And on there, there's a click for voter information. And if you haven't received your ballot in the next couple of days, please either call or email us, and we will get it out to you ASAP.
All right. Evan, are you having trouble sharing your screen, or is it working now? You want to give it Andrew, do you want to give that a try again? I think it may have been turned off.
There we go.
Excellent. There we are.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
So this is the ballot that Essex Junction registered voters will be receiving in the mail. Should look like a traditional ballot that you would normally have from the village, except there's a couple of new articles on here, which are the articles that we typically discuss during the annual meeting. The first one being Article 1, shall the voters act upon the report of the auditor? Frankly, this is, should you accept the audit report as is laid out within the annual report. If you don't have one, you can go to essexjunction.org, and on the left-hand side is all of the annual meeting information there. Article 2 is the budget question. It's, should you as a voter approve of the general fund budget of over $5 million, of which about 3.6 million is going to be levied against taxes. This is, again, typically when we would have the debate on the floor during village meeting. Since we cannot do that, we're going to be doing this, or since the governor has allowed us to do this through the ballot process, we're going to try that this time around to help keep everybody nice and safe and healthy, so that way we can vote on the budget through the ballot. And I'll go into some more details on the debate on the floor during village meeting. Article 3, this is to have us have our 2021 annual meeting. And then a little bit further down here, you will see who is up for the moderator. Let's see, we have one person running that way for a one-year term. For trustees, there are two different types of trustees who are running this time around. Dan Karen and George Tyler, who are running for re-election for their full 3-year term. They're running unopposed. There are 2 candidates, so you can vote for either one. You can vote for both of them. You can vote for 2 other people you'd like to write in. But that first box are for 2 candidates. The box down below where it says trustee with Amber Tebow, she is being elected for a 1-year term. She was originally appointed when Elaine Haney had stepped down. So now that Amber had fulfilled that seat, she now needs to be elected for the remainder of that term. So that is what Amber's running for. And then you can see there's one person running for the 1 seat as a library trustee for the Brownell Library Trustee Board.
Fantastic. And we will be hosting all of those trustee candidates, recognizing they're all uncontested. we will be hosting a forum next Thursday at 5:30, and that's a great chance to call in and talk to those folks, hear from them about why they're choosing to stay on the board or why they would like to be back on the trustees right now, and how they're going to approach, especially this time, governing in your behalf as voters in the village. And clear it up for me. This ballot is going to Essex Junction, village, and town voters. Is that right? Just the village?
This ballot here is only going to Village of Essex Junction residents.
Yep.
The school ballot, that one is going to village residents, town residents, and Westford residents.
Great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right. So let's get into the presentation of what is on the budget this year. And, I'm curious how much that has changed, or if any of it has changed in response to coronavirus
Absolutely.
planning. So why don't you all take it away?
Thank you. So I have to admit that this is a little different than what I was anticipating on doing this past April 1st, with it being April Fool's Day and my nature being somebody who likes to have a good time and joke around. I had a few different things planned. Since coronavirus came and ruined that, we won't have any of that tonight or this evening, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Maybe in 7 more years, we'll see. So this is the budget for the Village of Essex Junction, which will move forward sooner or later. There we go. Overall, the intent of the budget was to, one, not change any levels of service. So when the budget was developed, it was to provide the same services that our residents have come to know and love for the many years that the village has provided these services. This budget does not increase any level of service. It does not decrease any level of service. It is just a consistent budget and consistent levels. The staffing remains the same. There's no new staff. And with staff making the majority of the budget, staff, of course, need to have good health care and health insurance coverage. And so health care does tend to be one of the most significant cost drivers. We were able to mitigate some of those increases by being able to switch providers. But at the end of the day, the cost of people go up every year, as we all who work hard and do good work deserve to continue to have livable wages, to have a good health benefits package. So we continue that effort. We are also continuing with other budget initiatives of aligning our highway budgets and building budgets with the town of Essex, as we are continuing to work together more. This is also the first year's budget with a full year of our town and village recreation departments being located within the same building as a new full year initiative as we're going through that process. And then the other highlight is that the pool debt is no longer there. We have paid the entire bond, and the funds, instead of going back to the pool, the funds are going to or have gone into the general capital transfer, which will allow us to continue to do purchases of new equipment. And in particular for this year, the biggest purchase that this is going to go towards is a air tank refilling station, which I'm sure I'm not getting the full gist of for our fire department, as the old one that was there really needed to be replaced. And at a cost of a little over $80,000, it was determined that we'd better do that sooner rather than later, as in the worst case scenario, having firefighters without breathable oxygen is a big concern. So we wanted to make sure that our firefighters had that apparatus. So in our community, we have a few different funds. I'm going to just very briefly go over these. So these, as you will see, are the changes from fiscal year of 2020, the year we're currently in, to fiscal year 2021, which would begin July 1st. And you can see the changes from our current year to what we are proposing for this upcoming year. The general fund being what we generally understand as what the village needs to operate. So that includes things like the fire department. It includes things like the library, the administration, public works. All of that is in the general fund. The EJRP program fund, or Essex Junction Recreation and Parks Program Fund, that is what allows for the parks to provide the programs that they need in order to accommodate the desires of our community. So whether that's tennis lessons, archery, childcare, any of those are in the programs fund. And I should say that The general fund is the only one that is paid for by property taxes. The others are paid for by those who use the fund. So when we get to the water fund, the wastewater fund, and the sanitation fund, those are paid for by those users. Then going into our capital tends to be one of the larger buckets of things that we pay for, as we have a community with roads, water lines, and other infrastructure needs that need to be replaced. You can see that we have a $500,000 budgeted Lamoille water line project that we received the bids for a few meetings ago. So that might have been last month, which thankfully that came in under budget. We were able to get a great price, as our contractors are really looking forward to getting back out into work. So that has already come under budget, is what we had here. But Lamoille Street was one that had an undersized water line. The road was in desperate need of being rebuilt, as there were some pretty significant potholes there. So the residents on Lamoille are going to have nice, good, safe, clean water to drink, as well as they'll continue to have that, as well as to then have what goes from their drains back to the wastewater treatment plant and a brand new road. Rolling stock fund is for our vehicles and the debt that we may have on some of those vehicles. And as you can see, we're going to purchase a snow plow this year, or a sidewalk plow this year. The EJRP Capital Fund, so that way the amazing amenities that we have within Essex Junction Recreation and Parks can continue to be the high quality that they are. And then you can see the water capital, the wastewater wastewater treatment fund, the sanitation capital project, all the ability to maintain those infrastructures, to maintain the infrastructure that we need to continue to have the systems that we have. Back to the general fund. So again, this being the one that comes from property taxes. The salaries and benefits, you can see there's an increase of about $84,000, which that is for salaries, insurance, retirement. It's basically the cost of people. Paving, this $45,000 includes, I don't remember exactly how much. I believe the majority of that increase is actually from the town of Essex, where last town annual meeting, there was a request to increase how much goes into paving. And so since the village is a part of the town, it was decided to split up that increase between the two communities in an equitable way. And so this includes that portion as well. The professional and purchased services, this is going to allow for all those nice white stripes that happen in our roads, so that we can cross the sidewalks, or we can cross the road safely. We can use the bike lane safely, as well as to help with our recreation communications, and then necessary updates to our land development code. We have some miscellaneous needs in the maintenance department, capital transfers. That's money going into the capital fund, so that way we can do things like the Lamoille roadway, as well as save up some money for bigger projects that we have coming down the line. Debt reduction, you'll see that's going down $107,000 because we're not paying that pool debt anymore. So we're not paying that debt. Legal costs, equipment costs, and then other miscellaneous costs for about $10,000. All that, pretty much people then want to know, what does it actually mean? What does it mean for my wallet? What does it mean for my tax rate, or my property taxes? One thing I want to point out is you will see that the dollar amount from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021, the dollar amount is going up 3.19%, but the tax rate is only going up 2.26%. That difference is because of, and the difference from that is really because of other revenues that are not coming from property taxes. So funding from the town of Essex, it's funding from grants, it's funding from enterprise funds, which help to cover some of those costs in administration. You can also see that there's some growth in the grand list. So when I say the growth in the grand list, what I mean by that is when we have new buildings coming up. When we have one former building over on Maple Street that was, there's a few units apartment complex and one commercial space that's being built with somewhere around 30 or 40 units of housing with another first row of commercial properties. When that goes up, it's going to help increase the value of that property. And as those property values increase, that then means that the rest of us pay a little less. So your tax rate will be going up 2.26%, which on a $280,000 home in Essex would be, or in Essex Junction, would be $20.28 a year. So that is what the increase would be. And when I say your property value, I don't mean what you will get on a real estate market. I mean your assessed value. So your assessed value may be $280,000, even though your real estate assessment, what you could get if you're going to sell your home, may be in about $320,000, $350,000. So that's why it's important to look at that grand list and see where you lay. And then the last one that we would like to show as well is where all that money goes when we get that tax bill. Now that we in the village receive one tax bill, since we are residents of the town as well, what we have is you can see the smallest piece that's coming out. That little bit is the Village of Essex Junction. That's what we just talked about. That's the part that's going to go up by about $20 on the average assessed home. So with this pie chart showing what the amounts are on that average assessed home, where you see that little bit with that red line differentiating to the left, just above the Village of Essex Junction, that's the town of Essex. So as we are town of Essex residents, that is our portion of property taxes that are going to the town of Essex. And then you can see the biggest chunk, which is about 64% of our property tax bills going to the schools, into the Essex Westford School District. So that is where your money goes when you pay your property taxes. We also like to show this to make sure that if conversations come up about what are you getting for your value of service, to remind everybody, if you want to talk about, as what tends to happen on the floor of our annual meeting, if you want to talk about $10,000 here or so, in terms of 14% of your overall tax bill, it's less than pennies at that point in time. And so it doesn't have a significant impact. But at that point, that's the end of what I have prepared. I don't know, Megan, if you have specific questions, or Evan, if there's anything I missed that you'd like to go ahead and add in.
Well, I guess my question has to do with how the budget process has been affected, if at all, by coronavirus. Expectations in lowered programming, perhaps by Essex Parks and Rec. Are these assumptions, is that assumption an accurate one or is it not an accurate one? I recognize that you're going to keep people employed regardless, probably through the summer. But so maybe just talk about that, how coronavirus has affected the budget process.
Andrew, do you want me to take a stab at that since you were so gracious to do the budget chart?
You got this.
Maybe a little bit of back history. Most of our budget work is done in October through December, with meetings in January, long before COVID really burst on the scene. Some of our experience in issues of not only, maybe our first health issue crisis that I've been through, but certainly not my first economic issue. 2011 2009 was an interesting phenomenon. And so one of the things we find in local government is that when you have these emergencies, people want their government more. They need their local government. We also found that a lot of times the businesses around the community still need the community for the money that we put back into the community. As Andrew just mentioned, we went out to bid for Lamoille Street, which was a water line project, a resurfacing project, and some other miscellaneous things while the road is open. And we got fantastic bids. So when people want to work and money needs to be pumped into the community, we have those funds available for the most part. Second, the village, because of the way the state law goes, the town of Essex collects all the taxes for not only the village, but the school district and the town outside the village. And by law, they are required to make the village whole. So while we expect eventually all property taxes will get paid, it is really the town that takes on the burden of whether taxes are delinquent. To that end, both communities have been working in concert with ways to look at their budgets. Should the delinquencies be above standard? We have identified some expenditures that we could forego through periods of the year to see what happens with that. And so the village is prepared to make cuts if necessary throughout the year, but would rather be able to continue to do what is right for the community in the long term and deal with the short term in terms of community need and working with the town.
Is there any expectation or indication at this point that people are that you're expecting any tax delinquents?
Well, the national unemployment rate skyrocketing to over nearly 30 million people is an indicator, except locally, the state indicators of Essex and Essex Junction unemployment has only ticked up slightly so far.
Do you know that number?
Pardon?
Do you know that number?
About 1%.
Okay, yeah.
That would, but I'm careful with that because their numbers lag at least 4 weeks. Yep. So we probably will see that increase more in their next set of numbers. But other large employers in the village are still working. Global Foundries is humming along at their current state. In the town, Blodgett has been working. A lot of our employees work for the state and work for UVM Hospital Group, and for the school district. So a lot of them are still employed, including the village, who has not furloughed any employees, nor has the town yet. We're waiting to see if we can. A lot of our programs are now just coming online for the summer, and COVID cases are starting to stabilize, if not decline. So we see the governor opening up our restaurants, our businesses, and childcare.
Great. Andrew, Andrew, do you have anything more that you want to add about that process and what your impact, what you're saying about the impact of COVID on budgeting for this year, but also for the future?
Sure. So the budget that we presented is the exact same budget that we had that was prepared prior to COVID. At a trustee meeting, we intentionally had this conversation about what do we want to do in this COVID world with our proposed budget. And we all had discussed that, for one, nobody is asking us to cut any services. Frankly, the only thing that we had been hearing is an ask to increase services to help with noise protection and to help with the sounds that's being emitted from vehicles. So one of the things that we like to do is we like to hear from our community. And when our community is not telling us to reduce the budget, I don't feel the need to personally, and the rest of our trustees agreed with that, to keep the budget as it is. Moving forward, as Evan had mentioned with the unemployment rate, that is something that we're certainly tracking very, very closely. It's something that as those numbers come out, I know I personally look at them. As Evan had mentioned, it had only gone up about 1% the last time that we had seen those for Essex. So we will continue to do that. And as we budget for the future, really, I think what we're going to end up doing is talking about how do we need to institutionalize some of these practices that we are starting to see that may become the new normal. What will that mean for remote working? What will that mean for for Brownell, our library? What will it mean for our recreation department? Those are some of the conversations that we will need to have that we have not yet. And so I know our staff are going to be and have been working on that, and we'll bring that to us in a future meeting.
Great, thank you. I guess the one last thing is, your annual meetings and certainly the town meetings are pretty poppin'. They're active and people have things to say. And has there been any talk of how you can replicate that in some way? I mean, we didn't have any calls tonight, but that's not always that unusual. Is there some way that you're going to try to get that feedback that you would usually get from the floor on the budget process?
So I know we're trying to leverage social media to the best extent possible, recognizing, of course, that not everybody uses Facebook, not everybody reads Front Porch Forum, but we're using the tools that we currently have available to us to try and reach our neighbors and friends. I know one of the things that we as trustees do is we ask our friends and neighbors as things come up or as we see them coming up, we ask, what are your thoughts on this? What's your opinion on that? So that way we're able to get the input from the community. For a broader scale, Honestly, I'm not too sure what we're going to be able to do to get as much input as we possibly can, or to replicate 150 to 200 people in a room asking questions and having a dialogue. I don't know how we're going to be able to do that at this point in time. I'm really curious, frankly, to see what some of the larger communities in our country end up doing around this. As a Zoom meeting that you can only have 20 faces on the screen at a time, it's not quite the same. It's as close as we have right now, but it's still not quite the same. I know one of our residents, Annie Cooper, very early on in the COVID process, had a great game of telephone where she started from her house and it went approximately a quarter to a half of a mile or so down their street and through their neighborhood, which maybe we could institute some kind of practice like that of just shouting from one end to the other and have it go from neighbor to neighbor. But then again, things can get lost in translation.
Yeah. And then, so, what I'm hearing from you is people are happy to keep the budget process on track with where it's going. You're not hearing people say limited. What is being done in the village or in the town, in Unified Essex around researching the $400 million that Scott has promised to communities to mitigate? And will that have any impact on the budget at all?
Well, first we have reached out to a lot of our restaurants and some of our other businesses about how COVID is affecting them and how they will operate in a reduced seating environment. So we are working with them on that. The governor's recent announcement is great news. We have already started a process of reaching out to our businesses to see how we could be of help to them and helping them navigate through all of those application processes. Some of them have already told us they've gotten PPE loans. Some have said that for whatever reason, they didn't go that route, but they're looking at other avenues. And so it's, I guess, a cliche now, the new normal. Yeah. Just dealing with what comes next. And so one thing we do know, that people really enjoy where they live. They love being Junction residents and the services that have been provided to them. They have been very helpful to those in need. In fact, they've raised tens of thousands of dollars for the food pantries that serve this area. For that, we are very thankful. The town has a 1% Health and Human Services grant fund that the voters have had in place for years. Those funds just got approved select board meeting and have been hitting the streets to our awardees. And as a collective, we try to be there for everybody, and it's been interesting to see. And our offices are still open and our people are still working. So I guess that's kind of the new normal, but we're just doing it from remote locations. And our buildings are still open. They're by appointment mainly. Yeah.
All right. So Evan, you mentioned Essex, Vermont, essexvt.org, and then Andrew, you referenced Essex Junction. Can people find the same information at both sites at this point? So you could go to either website to look up this information.
You can click from either one to get to either website.
Yep. And then Andrew, if you could just put up that last screen that summarizes the whole budget, the pie chart, that would be great. And we can round out the evening with that so folks can see that. So the big takeaways that I'm hearing is there's no big cuts in staff. There's no major increases in healthcare, just the general increases in healthcare costs, right? And we're looking at a $926 cost on an average home, $280,000 assessed value. And we vote on June 2nd. Is that right? Well, I don't. I'm no longer a resident of Essex Junction. I did grow up there, but I'm no longer a resident. So you'll get your ballot in the mail or call the clerk if you haven't heard. Right?
And Andrew, June 1st, we're doing the electronic town meeting.
Yes, June 1st, we are doing an informational village meeting. June 1st at 7 p.m. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So sort of similar this kind of presentation again. How are people going to join with that?
If they go to the village's website, the connection information is on there. We use Microsoft Teams as the platform, so it will be on that. I know Town Meeting TV will be covering it as well.
That's right.
So I'm assuming that there will also be a link through Town Meeting TV.
Fantastic. And what's the joke that you wish you had told, or do we really have to wait 7 years?
The first one, the one that I was really going to go for was creating a new fund, a new enterprise fund. It was going to be called, I'm forgetting the acronym, but it's spelled out SLUSH, or a nice slush fund that we were going to use for environmental purposes and trips to Tahiti.
All right. Well, no more trips to Tahiti.
No, unfortunately not.
For a couple, maybe not.
That was not brought through administration. We don't use those terms.
No, it was purely mine.
I know.
It's funny. Purely an April Fool's joke that we'll have to wait. Andrew, you'll have to stick it out on the trustees if you keep getting elected for 7 more years. All right. Well, thank you both. Any last things that you want to make sure to share with the voters?
Just our thanks and appreciation to Town Meeting TV, as well as all of those residents who are following the stay home, stay safe orders, wearing their masks, and doing what we can to help slow this spread.
And come out and vote. If you get your ballot in the mail and want to do it that way, if not, we will social distance you at the polls on June 2nd.
From 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Essex High School.
Great.
And please understand that we're doing the best we can during these trying times.
Yeah. Thank you both. And thank you all for watching. You can scroll around and learn more. And we will see you here next Thursday, May 28th at 5:30 to hear from your trustee candidates. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.